Hi, my name is Max Michon. I'm the owner and one of the trainers at my business Ready, Set, Train. And in today's video, we're going to go over how to teach two basic behaviors, sit and down. So although sit and down are two basic behaviors, I see a lot of people make mistakes when training this or teaching this to their dogs. So we're going to break it down step by step for you of how to teach these two basic behaviors to your dog. We're going to do a couple of things. First, we're going to get the behaviors through a process called luring and go over what that is. We're going to teach a hand signal, and finally we're going to add a verbal cue to teach our dogs the word like sit or down and respond to just that word by itself. But we're going to start with showing you guys how to do a process called luring. So luring is a process where we use a treat, we put it right up to the dog's nose, and we move that treat nice and slow and get the dog to follow that treat around. Kind of think about the treat being the magnet locked onto the dog. If you move it nice and slow, the dog will follow it. If we take that treat and we rip it way out to the side, it's going to be harder for the dog to follow that treat. So in order to teach a sit behavior, what we're going to do, we're going to take a treat, we're going to stick it to the dog's nose, and we're going to slowly start to bring that treat straight back over the dog's head between its eyes. Some dogs will try to back up, just move it really slowly, and we can break this down into little steps. So at first I'm just getting Winslow to get his head to lean back a little bit more. Eventually what's going to happen is Winslow is not going to be able to back up or turn his head back any farther, and he's going to put his butt on the ground. At that point we give the dog the treat, and then we reset them. So I bring that treat straight back, locked to its nose, straight over his head. His butt hits the ground, I give the dog the treat. We're going to do this one more time. Take the treat straight to his nose, straight over his head, between his eyes. When his butt hits the ground, boom, I give him the treat. So the key with luring is that we want to get the treats out of our hand as quickly as possible. The more we have this treat in our hand, the more the dog is just thinking about that food. And we might be able to get them to move or follow that treat, but they're not necessarily really thinking about their behavior in full. So now that Winslow, I've seen him follow that lure for 3 times, at the most maybe try to do this 3 or 4 times until the dog's behavior is pretty fluent and if they're easily sitting and following that treat. Then what we're going to do is we're going to get the treat out of our hand. Come here, Winnie. Winslow, come here. I'm going to get Winslow's attention. I want to do everything exactly the same as if I had the treat in my hand. I'm going to hold my hand the same way. I'm going to move my hand at the same speed. I am not going to have a treat in my hand though. And I'm going to show Winslow even that I don't have any food. Winslow. Good. I do that motion over his head. I click. Then I reward when he puts his butt on the ground. Again, I'm not going to have any treats in my hand. I put my hand, hold it in the same way as if I'm holding a treat, move it in the same speed. Mark when his butt hits the ground. What you can start to do is fade this visual signal or this cue in order to make it more and more less exaggerated. So I'm going to do it again. Winslow. Winnie. I'm clicking, I'm using my marker, which if you haven't watched the video on how to use a marker, we have a video that you can watch up here. But I'm marking the second his butt hits the ground. And that marker, that click in my case, means that Winslow did the right thing. We'll do one more. Winslow. Hey. Good boy. This is now going to become your hand signal. Doing this motion, the way that we taught the behavior, is a hand signal now for Winslow to sit. The final stage is adding a verbal cue. So the last thing that we're going to want to do, really, reset Winslow again. Winslow. I would say the word sit. I pause a second to see if he does it. I do that hand signal. Then I'm going to reward. And even though Winslow laid down here, I clicked right when his butt hit the ground, so I was rewarding that behavior. We'll do it one more time. Winslow. Sit. That time he responded to just verbal. The key is that we're not doing 2 or 3 things at the same time. If I say sit as I'm moving that hand signal, I don't know if the dog is listening to the word that I'm saying or if they're just watching my hand move. So we want to always give the dog an opportunity to respond to the verbal cue. you say the word sit or down, wait a second or two, then do that hand signal that we know the dog knows because that's how we taught it with the luring process. So that's how we're going to teach a sit. Start to then generalize this to different areas, work on sit at random times, and see if your dog will respond to just those verbal cues by themselves. So now that we've taught our dog how to sit, the next cue that we can teach, the next behavior we can teach is a down. So we get our dogs in a sit position, and what we're going to do, we're going to take a treat, we're going to go back and lure this behavior because it's new. And the first thing that I want to do is get my dog's nose to touch the ground. We want to bring this treat, let me see if I can straighten Winslow out a little bit here. We want to get this treat to go straight down and ideally a little bit into the dog's body. If you pull it out, the dog's going to get up and be more likely to get out of that sit position. So if we keep the treat locked to their nose, we bring it straight down to the ground. Winslow lost my lure. Here you go, buddy. Still in my hand. Hey. And then we can reward as he starts to go down. Come here, Winnie. We get him to sit. Put that treat to his nose. Treat straight down. Give him that reward when he lays his body down. We'll do it again. Come here, Winnie. Straight down to the ground, and boom, give him that treat. Winslow is laying down right when I'm putting the treat to the ground. Some dogs, they won't do that right away. They'll just hold their nose to the ground. Those dogs, you can either hold the treat there and just kind of wait and see if the dog will lay down on their own, or you can do one of two things. You can slowly start to bring the treat away. Winslow, you can get up, buddy. Come here. Let's reset Winslow. When their nose touches the ground, you can slowly start to bring that treat away from their body, and a lot of dogs will begin to bend their legs that way. Other dogs do better if you push that treat into them a little bit, and they'll bend that way. So it takes a little bit of experimentation to see what luring method is going to work best for you and your dog. Just try out a couple of things, a little trial and error, and see what your dog is responding to. The biggest thing is, though, when you're bringing that treat down to the ground, make sure it's in a straight line. Don't pull it out away from the dog's nose, or they're more likely to get up and get out of position. So just like before, we start with luring and having a treat in our hand. Once we get the dog reliably laying on the ground, we want to get those treats out of our hand as quickly as possible. We are going to hold our hand in the same way, move at the same speed, just like we were doing with the sit behavior. Come here, Winnie. Let's get Winslow up. Now that I've got Winslow in a sit, I'm going to hold my hand in the same position, same speed. I'm going to move my hand slowly down to the ground. When Winslow lays down, I'm going to give him the reward, mark it, and then give a treat. But remember, I don't have a treat in my hand. So I'll get him to reset again. Winslow, come here, bud. Show him I don't have a treat. Move my hand slowly down to the ground. Mark when all his body is on the ground. Give him a treat. Winslow's doing pretty good about staying on the ground. Some dogs will want to get up right away. That's okay, as long as you mark the behavior of them laying all their body on the ground. They're going to know that's why they got the reward. If you want, you can always have a treat in your opposite hand. So, Winslow, come here, bud. Sit. Do that motion, mark, and then reward with the opposite hand while the dog is in the down position. So if you want to get the treat down in position and your dog's getting up very quickly, you can do that. So that's how we start to get the hand signal. Eventually we can start to fade this hand signal and make it less exaggerated. I won't need to bring my hand all the way down to the ground in order to get the dog to lay down. In small approximations, I can make this less and less exaggerated. So let's see if we can try a couple with that. Come here, Winnie. Get him to sit. Now I'm going to, there we go. Even there, he was starting to follow my hand down. He might have been anticipating that I was going to have him go down because we've been doing this a lot. But all the same, I'm making this hand signal less exaggerated. Come here, Winnie. Sit. Hey, sit. So small approximations, a little bit less and a little bit less. And if you work at this a lot, eventually your hand signal could just be going this slight movement, and your dog will see that visual cue. The final stage, just like with the behavior of sit, is we're going to add a verbal cue for this. So I'm going to say down. Remember, we need a slight separation between the word and the hand movement. That way we know that the dog is listening to the word that we're saying. We're giving them an opportunity just to respond to the word by itself. So let's get Winslow up again. Come here, Winnie. Sit. Down. I mark when he lays his body on the ground. He didn't respond to the word down. I waited a second or two. I did the hand motion. That's how he's going to associate or learn the word means the same thing. We'll do it again. Reset Winslow here. There you go. Sit. Down. Good boy. Good boy. Do one more. Come here, Winnie. Sit. Down. All right. So it takes some time to just pair the word with the behavior. The newer your dog is at training, the less words they know, the longer it's going to take. The more you teach them, the faster they'll pick up this pattern. A couple of tips or tricks for this that I see people run into problems with a lot. One is when you get the treat out of your hand and the dog doesn't go do the behavior because they say, hey, there's no food around, don't immediately go back and get a treat. You will teach your dog to just wait and ignore you or hold out until you go get the food. So even if the behavior is not as fluent or isn't as good as it was when you had the treat in your hand, don't go back. Get them to understand that if they do the behavior, even approximation of it, that's how they're going to get their food. It's going to come out afterwards. The other thing is that we've talked about a lot, separate the word from the hand signal. If you do two things at once, it's going to be hard for the dog to really focus in on one thing. More than likely, the dog is going to just watch our body movement because that's what dogs pay attention to more than the words that we're saying. And then the final thing is, especially with sitting down, I see dogs anticipate behaviors a lot with this. So it's a good idea to keep the order that you cue things random. Sometimes cue your dog to go down, sometimes sit, sometimes do a hand target. Again, if you haven't seen that video, you can click it here. But make the behaviors random. Otherwise, our dogs really just start to anticipate the next thing that we're going to do. Every time that mom says sit, the next thing she tells me to do is down. So I'm just going to go sit down before anybody even tells me to do it. And that's not really the most beneficial long-term for our dogs if they're just guessing. So sometimes we do sit, sometimes we do touch, sometimes we do their name, sometimes we do down. Keep it random, and your dog is really going to learn to focus in on you, not anticipate the next cue. So those are two basics. They're not super hard. They're fun. They're foundation behaviors for a lot of other things like stay. So have fun with it. Do short sessions. Make it positive, and in no time at all, your dog will be responding to these two behaviors. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check out all the other basic behavior videos that we have going here. And if you would like to, you can also follow us on our other social media on Instagram and Facebook if you search at Ready Set Train Dogs.